Good morning, friends, and welcome to New Garden Friends meeting. We are worshiping back entirely digitally this morning as we are experiencing some rainy and unpleasant weather here in Greensboro. It is so good to be able to be with all of you, even if we are not able to be together in person this morning. What a gift it has been for us to learn how to use technology in this way. Friends, this morning I want to extend a wide and warm welcome to all of you. Here at New Garden Friends meeting, welcome is central to who we are as a community of faith. You are welcome here among friends. No matter your age or race, no matter your gender identity or sexual orientation, you are welcome here among friends. No matter what was the first language that you spoke, your abilities, your politics, or your immigration status, you are welcome here among friends. No matter where you may be on your faith journey, you are welcome here. Whether you are a birthright, all your lifelong Quaker, or whether this is your first time ever joining Quaker worship, you are welcome here. We are a community of seekers. We love to ask questions together, and your questions and your seeking are welcome here in this space. Friends, to open our worship this morning, I have a reading to share with all of you. This reading is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verses 26 through 32. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version. But in the first parable, the parable of the growing seed, the gardener in that parable, in the New Revised Standard Version, is gendered as a man. But of course, we know that gardeners can be men or women. And so I have changed the language in the text to reflect a more contemporary understanding. The parable of the growing seed. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is as if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise, and night and day the seed would sprout and grow. And she doesn't know how. The earth produces of itself first the stalk and then the head, then the full grain in the head. But when the grain is ripe, at once she goes with her sickle, because the harvest has come." The parable of the mustard seed. Jesus also said, "With what can we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable will we use for it? It is like a mustard seed, which, when sown upon the ground, is the smallest of all the seeds of the earth. And yet, when it is sown, it grows up and becomes the greatest of all shrubs, and puts forth large branches, so that the birds of the air can make nests in its great shade." Friends, I would invite you to join me as we enter into our waiting silent worship together. Let us hold the silence together as a community, and I will bring my prepared message from that silence. Friends who have been attending worship for some time at New Garden Friends meeting know that I love talking about the kingdom of God. It is a key part of my faith. And for me as a Quaker, it's an important part of how I understand the movements of the Spirit in our world. the work of the living presence that is with us at all times. The kingdom of God is understood in some Christian traditions as the world that will come. It is the blessed kingdom that will be created when Christ comes again. But for me, as a Quaker, I believe that Christ is alive in this moment, that the living presence, the living spirit inhabits this moment that we are in now, and it is not some future promise of a world to come. Many Quakers are not waiting for the second coming. They instead believe that the Holy Presence is with us in our present moment. So for many Quakers, the kingdom of God is not a promise for the future. Instead, it is that irresistible, incredible, mystical way that the Spirit is breaking into and transforming our current world. The parable about the kingdom of God is incredibly powerful, both of these parables, because they suggest both the extraordinary and the ordinary. They suggest both the incredible and the miraculous, and also the commonplace. Suggested in these parables is the power of God's transformative spirit. That power that shows up in small and normal ways, and also in incredible, mystical, unbelievable ways. This passage tells us that the kingdom of God is like the seeds that are scattered upon the earth, seeds that grow not because of careful tending or strategic agricultural practices, but seeds that simply grow out of the magic of creation, that magic of the natural world that turns a tiny seed into a sprout, and then a plant with leaves, and then a greater plant that bears fruit. This parable does not suggest a complete absence of work on the part of humankind. The gardener must be ready when the harvest of the grain comes, and this requires her awareness that the grain has ripened and grown, and also her willingness to work hard to turn that grain into nourishment for her community. And yet, even though human labor, human work is involved in the kingdom of God, the growth itself happens incredibly all around the gardener in a way that she did not anticipate. When I think of the kingdom of God, I think of the world that the Spirit longs for us to live in. A world of justice, a world of mercy, a world of peace, a world where systems of love have replaced systems of hate. This seems like such an impossibly different world than the one that we live in now. So it is no wonder that the kingdom of God can feel like a far-off possibility instead of a current part of our reality. And that is the power of the mustard seed parable for me, because the mustard seed is so very tiny, and yet it grows into something incredible. It is something that seems entirely inconsequential, something that would be easy to overlook. And yet it turns into a mighty thing that provides shade and shelter. I love this imagery of the mustard shrub. The mustard plants that I have seen are not so very large, but in the Middle East, I think plants grow larger. Mustard plants grow larger than they do here in North America. And in this parable, we have this image of a shrub that is so large that it provides a place of solace and rest for birds. I imagine it vibrant and grand. The kingdom of God is like that tiny act of courage that sparks a whole movement for justice. The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. And so the kingdom of God is like those tiny acts of kindness that seem too small to make any real difference, and yet can still transform a day or even someone's whole life. As I was sitting with my message for this first day, I kept thinking about how I long for our world to change. We were approaching what is now a federal holiday, Juneteenth, and I was thinking about freedom and how I long for our world to become more just, for our country to reckon in real ways around issues of racism, and to become a place of racial equity. I dream of a world that is safe for my daughter to live in. Coming soon, I will have 2 daughters. And I dream of a world where sexual violence will not be a common and ongoing threat in their lives. I long for a world where there are economic systems that do not exploit, but instead uplift. Systems that we have never seen at work in our country. Systems where everyone has what they need. I long for a world that runs on generosity instead of greed. I long for a world where we can ask first, what is most kind? And then we ask, what is most fair? And that is what we do. And for me, the incredible good news of these 2 parables is that the world that I long for is breaking into the world that I live in now. Those breaking ins may be so small that I may not see them or recognize them, or they may be so large that they are a harvest that can nourish a whole community. But the promise here is that they do exist, that the kingdom of God is all around us if we only have eyes to see. If we can only see even the tiny mustard seeds. So this morning, I want to share with you some of what the kingdom of God is like in my life. The kingdom of God is like the neighbor who shares his squash from his garden. It is like the friends who pitch in together to help repair their neighbor's car when it breaks. It is like the children who share their snacks on the playground and the other children who invite newcomers to join in their game. The kingdom of God is giving without asking for the context and without expecting anything in return. The kingdom of God is like the activists who take to the streets and call for justice and reform in our country. like the teachers who work long hours into the night to make the world a tiny bit better for some of their students. It is the person who pays for a stranger's gas, and the librarian who has time to listen to every child's story and find them just the right book to read. The kingdom of God is the people who rescue animals, the scared and abused animals who need comfort and support and love and care. The kingdom of God is the families who foster children, who love them and protect them and care for them when they are longing for stability and comfort. The kingdom of God is the grown child who visits their parent with dementia and continues to love them and care for them when they are no longer familiar or known. The kingdom of God is all of this and so much more. It is the spirit that is bursting through each moment, that is gloriously known in human kindness and love, that is incredibly rewriting even the most stubborn and persistent stories of hate and fear. The kingdom of God is a good reason to hope. The kingdom of God is a good reason to love. The kingdom of God is the best of what we can be now and the rich possibility of what we can become in the future. Friends, my urging to you this first day is to have eyes to see the seeds of the kingdom of God that are growing in your life. What ways have you witnessed these transformations of the Spirit? And how are you part of this work of the kingdom of God? What harvests of love are you reaping in your life and sharing with your family and with your community? And what tiny seeds might grow into mighty trees of the future? This morning, friends, I am so filled with curiosity and with joy. I want to know, friends, what do you know of the kingdom of God? Tell me your stories of love and joy and hope. And together, friends, let us tell a story as a community of faith, a story of mustard seeds that are growing into mighty trees. Let us tell together the story of the kingdom of God that is growing all around us on this day and the days to come.